deal back then, and obviously I don't think it is a big deal, especially clans, and how they're going to have some bonuses, and one of those being obviously is, you know, the weapon hardpoints. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to something else. Now, this wasn't mentioned in the notes, and it has not been confirmed, but this is one of the, you know, things that I'm going to reach out and talk to Paul about, and possibly just getting an official announcement on this, is the ability to add armor. And the reason I said this is no one has actually said, yes, you're able to increase the armor amount. Not change the armor. On OmniMechs, you can't change the stock armor as far as the type. If it's Pharaoh, it's Pharaoh. If it's standard, it's standard. But some of the clan mechs come stock with so little armor, even if you double it, how it currently is, that that they will be punched through like tinfoil. So I would love confirmation on this, because if it doesn't get changed, I feel like that's going to be a big deterrent towards taking clan mechs in general. And Tyler, comp scene wise, if they come with stock armor values, do you see that being an issue?
Yeah, it could just automatically make certain mechs non-viable for competition, and they just wouldn't be taken. And I don't think that's what PGI is aiming to do, but we'll see.
I mean, and, you know, someone was like, well, you know, that's the way it is, or at least that's how it says in the tech manual. I'm going to go on a limb and say, well, they're sacrificing something, right? I mean, they could put a heat sink on, they could put more weapons on. So what if, you know, if I take a Timberwolf Prime and I want to drop the machine guns and medium pulse and, you know, max it out as far as armor, I only have X amount I can take anyways, right? I mean, there's only a max you can take. But I feel like that's sort of an important part, because like the Summoner, very, very thin armor. The Lights, mediocre. Mediums are actually a sweet spot. If you look at the Nova stock armor values and you look at the Hunchback, even if the Hunchback was maxed, the Nova actually only has like 30 less points overall. So the mediums are actually a nice sweet spot for the clan mechs. But I think we need confirmation on that, because it's a pretty important part. One mech, Hellbringer, anybody? If it ever is introduced, it has paper-thin standard armor, like paper-thin.
I mean, do you think there's a potential for them to use the fixed amount of armor between variants as a balancing factor for if one variant, say, has more hard points in like an arm than, say, another one? Like the one with the less, you know, a single energy hard point maybe has more armor?
The only thing I could see is if they keep to where you can't add armor, go ahead and introduce clan mech weapons as being more powerful. Like you'd almost have to make clan mechs be almost OP to an extent. You know, that borderline of they do a lot more damage, because your time on field may be relatively short, so you have to get it done really quick. Does that make sense? I mean, like if you can't take a whole lot of damage, you need to be able to dish out just as much. So I, you know, in how they balanced, you know, MWO so far, you know, and they've stated, and I still feel they need to double the internal structure values, just like they did armor. I still think it just needs doubled. But the time to death ratio, obviously this depends. I know this isn't like a fixed percent or whatever, and there's so many variables that go into it: skill, what weapons, all that fun stuff. I just feel like, are the clans going to come in here with a crutch? You know, like they're already going to have, you know, just a weight on their foot, and they're already sinking, you know, and they have to fight against that. And, you know, someone could say, oh, well, it's, you know, they have to be better, you know, they have to be better skilled, you know, and stuff like that. But I feel like that's the trade-off they're going to have to do.
From what we've heard of their ideas for clan weapon balancing already, it seems like their weapons are going to be plenty powerful. So to make all the weapons even more powerful, just to compensate for a couple mechs that have slightly less armor, because I mean, there's still going to be the dire wolf striding around out there, and it has as much armor as an Atlas. You don't want to give it buffs because its, you know, cousins are weaker armored. So I'm thinking really all they could do if they don't let you change the armor would be to put a few quirks, mech quirks. They've introduced that system for certain mechs to make them better, either through mobility, or they could do it in that way through, I don't know, slight increases in damage or something for their weapons.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see, me personally, I wouldn't want to see chassis-specific quirks to where just because that mech is deficient in some things, that it gets a bonus in like damage. That's one thing I wouldn't want to see. Like magical, oh well, the awesome does more damage with its PPCs. I've never liked that idea. And yes, the direwolf will be striding around, and there will be mechs like the Timberwolf that have a good amount of armor and firepower and stuff like that. But also the size of the direwolf, just because it's big and strong doesn't mean it's going to be the end-all be-all. And I feel like adding armor is just a must. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you need to be able to add more if you want it. I mean, you're sacrificing other stuff. Let me at least upgrade, or not upgrade, let me at least add armor. I think at the end of the day, it needs to be done.
Let me play devil's advocate for a minute. Would you trade armor for an ability to have a quirk that allowed you to bypass ghost heat to a certain extent? Going back to your awesome example, which I know is not a clan, say you could mount that third PPC on an awesome and not face a penalty.
Well, then, I don't know. To me, I still, and I've said this in the past, I don't think ghost heat is the end-all be-all. I feel like maybe down the road they can sit down and rethink how that's handled. Obviously, it's very difficult for a new player. They did mention, by the way, I think in the notes, that there will be some type of indicator for a new player, so when they put, let's say, 3 large lasers on a mech, it'll actually tell them, hey, you're going to have an increase in heat. But that being said, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I have no problem with making some of these chassis that are subpar on par, but look at the Hunchback. I know we're getting off topic here. Look at the Hunchback 4J. It just got a decrease in its hunch overall. I've actually had a few pilots that are good high elo say that's the best Hunchback right now because the hitboxes and it doesn't have that. And I've loved it for a while, but because just the change of geometry on a few of the Hunchbacks now have made some of the worst Hunchback now actually decent. And, so that's what I think. I know I'm going off on a limb. I've talked about the awesome as far as its perks and this and that. Doesn't matter how good and efficient that mech is at firing. If it's still a barn door, it's still going to be able to be taken out,
Speaking of which, real quick, speaking of Hunchbacks and quirks, a little off topic, I would like to see, and that's not my idea, but to be able to put more armor on that hunch to compensate for its geometry, more than the standard mount you're allowed to put on a 50-ton mech's right torso.
I thought about that. I thought about that actually in the past, and this is why I came to the conclusion I don't like it, because of the Highlander 733C. If you allow to be able to strip armor off another location and or add armor, unless it was per mech as far as per location. For instance, Hunchback 4G and 4H, you can do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's all I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's just those, 4H, 4G,
Yeah.
4P.
I have no problem with that to an extent, but I think what they should do anyways is just reduce the overall hunch, just like the 4J, by 1/3. The 4H and the 4G and the Gridiron now reduce the overall length of it. I mean, to me, I was playing around in the 4J and I was playing around in the 4SP, and it was a world of difference compared to the 4G and the 4H. So I just think that instead of introducing a whole other mechanic, or that's basically what it is when you look at the overall scheme of things. But I also feel like that's something that BattleTech never really addressed, right? Because they didn't have to. It was random hit location and stuff like that. So as far as that goes, Tyler, I actually wouldn't be opposed to it. I would just like, a little bit more thought, I guess, put into specific, like what mechs get what. Some, might not get it at all, blah, blah, blah. And could it be abused to an extent? Those are the type of things. But I think giving some chassis the ability to tank more in some roles, like that's one thing BattleTech never did as well, to where they created, some of these weird, unique tweaks and abilities to a specific chassis based on its lore almost, right? Like, what's the point of having this huge hunch if it doesn't give you added protection? Or why does it have a hunchback or huge hunch, but yet all the other mechs equipped with an AC-20 don't? Like the Atlas. Why does the Atlas only have just the barrel,
How about
and it has this...
The Trebuchet 7K. In its left torso, the AC-20 can fit in there, and it's completely contained just in its little side torso.
Yeah.